Hello everybody, nice to have you here. Getting cold outside, so I will try to keep my head warm so I can produce some nice content today. Um, Today I wanna show some stuff I worked on last weeks, and basically I struggled a bit trying to find the correct documentation and how to build it, so I just wanna share it with you. So we'll not wait too long and we'll jump directly to the point. And the point is, so there is Adobe Commerce Admin UI SDK available. I hope you all know about this one. And what you can do with this tool, you can extend your Adobe Commerce with Adobe App Builder without touching any code of your Magento application. And you can extend Admin UI with new components, new elements coming from a builder. So the main features the admin UI is providing is adding new menu items. So you can place a menu item. When you click on it, you have a builder loaded within your Adobe Commerce. You have page, which is similar, but creates a new page that redirects you to a builder application. And then you have the stuff what I want to talk today about is extending the orders, customers, and products, and especially extending the grid functionalities. And that's what I worked on last week, and I struggled a bit trying to find out how it really works and how especially to see that it works and debug it, because there are some limitations I'll talk about. So we will try to add a new grid column within the order. So to configure the admin UI SDK, you need to go into the configuration. So first of all, you need to have this module installed, but usually if it's a new commerce project, you have it already. Then you have to go to Adobe Services and Admin UI SDK. And by the way, that's a new version of the module. So if you haven't updated yet, do it. And you may struggle when you will try to do it. That's nothing very easy in this world. And especially in Adobe world, not everything easy. So what we need to do, let me show you. So when you will try to install the module, you will have issue like this, that Adobe Commerce extension meta package is required at Magento Commerce Backend SDK. I'm not sure you have this module, so this depends on your setup because it's used for edge delivery services also. But if you'll see this error, just know you need to declare this Commerce Backend SDK in this manner. So there are just dependency issues between the modules, and to solve them, you just need to fake a bit the real version. Just want to share that you know it if you will hit it somewhere. Then after updating the module, you'll get some set of new nice features. One of them I really liked is database login configuration. So it's logging the connections between your system and Adobe Builder, so you can troubleshoot if something doesn't work correctly, which is very nice. And then we will come to testing section, but I'll touch it a bit later. So we want to add a new column, and to add a new column, you need first of all to provide an information for this column. So within your builder application, you need to have an action that will provide an information for the grid with the data technically. And you can go through the whole installation process about the admin UI SDK, installing the modules. You need to prepare your module for be able to work with it. So let me then show you also on my example. So first of all, you need to have install PHP file, which is within your root. It's mostly always the same. I mean, it can be different for you if you for sure have any customs modifications. You need extension manifest file, which is also here for me. By the way, I'm showing an example of the HubSpot integration we published recently. Just hit this URL and find the extension. By the way, I'll publish some files on repository and will attach it to the description of this video, so feel free. Then, by the way, there is extension registration component. You don't need it if you just extend in the grid. Be aware. That's for the menu items. The same with the app.js route. It is for the menu items. Then you need registration runtime action. That's true. That's I have defined. Let me show you. So I have here admin UI SDK action, which is forwarding to my action registration index PHP. That's more or less registering the module and provide the metadata for the module then to be loaded by Adobe Commerce and to be able to know which extension points you have. If I will open the file, It looks like following. You have to define here your mesh ID. So you need Adobe API mesh if you want to work with grid columns. So you need to create API mesh. How to create API mesh? I'll send you to previous videos. So you will need the mesh ID here. And then you need some properties like, for example, that's my columns for the grid. So that's a column name or column code. That's column label, and then the type and some styling like align center. So this information needed for Magento extension to know how to render your column. Then, yes, you need to change your app config file YAML. So just follow this documentation. That's quite relevant. You need to add extension points, then define it like Commerce Backend UI 1. It's technically matches this one. So the extension point ID. And wait, I lost it. And that's it, honestly. So yeah, you need to change that your file looks similar like this one, or check this example. That's very, very valid. That's basically it on the first point. So then you have your, let me jump back to the actions. Then first of all, you have this registration, which I showed about. And then you also has action, order, grid, columns, JS. This section return you the data. So when the Magento rendering the grid, it's calling this action. And this JavaScript file return you the list of the values. In my case, it's order status values, so I'm loading them from key value storage and display it. I mean, in your case, it can be anything else. But let me show you the example how this looks when you call it. So if a builder calling it, it's look like following. So it's return you the information about your statuses for the order. But be aware, as we have here in registration mesh ID, it's not calling this URL directly. So the next step would be to create a mesh for this action. How to create a mesh for this action? You need to know. So you need to create the mesh file. The mesh file for you will contains out of JSON schema, because you technically just providing, you don't provide an API, right? You providing just an action point which return you back, you're right, JSON. So it's then a JSON schema. You define here the base URL, that's your action URL. You define here the headers you need to bypass. Please keep it here. I'll tell you why. Because in my case, for be able to test locally, the section do not require Adobe Auth. That's why I can open it in a browser. When you go into production, you need to set this to true. So it means your data are not exposed outside. If you set it to true, Adobe or admin UI of Magento will send the authorization headers, and for that they need to be passed to the endpoint. That's why you need these parameters here. Just the variables, you don't need to change them. Just don't forget to put them here. Then you define the operation. So that's basically your endpoint here, which provide information about the query and about the schema. So now in my case, it's the last part of the URL. And then I'm defining here the field name for the GraphQL to use, then type, then method, and then I'm defining the schema of the orders. So that's basically just a JSON, so I need to create a schema for it. And to create a schema for it, that's one example how to do it. That's example of the schema files. Quite easy. I guess, and I'd hope it's have to be somewhere documented here. Yes, it is. So that's a sample file you can get from here. I mean, that's already everything written here, including the example of the this file, which return you back the status. In this case, it's hard-coded, but I mean, that's up to you how to change it. One nice add-on they added in the latest releases. Now, when you render the order grids, like following, you have a list of orders you see. So the Magento will send it like IDs inside. means you can filter it by received properties. In this case, you don't need to load all like elements, because if you have thousands of the orders which you fetch from somewhere, you don't want to fetch all of them. You just need those 20 you see currently on the screen. So that's a filtering for them. And that's it. So after you did it and you configure it, it's have to work. But be aware, it will work with several requirements. First of all, for Adobe Commerce Authorized Against a Builder, you need to have Adobe EMS module installed. So it's basically Adobe Commerce integration to be able to log in Magento Admin. I also have a video on this topic. If you're curious, go there. And after you'll have it installed, then the Magento will know where to get information about registration from, and you're good to go. So it will be used. It will work. In my case, I want to test it as developer. I don't want to publish the module. I don't want to have it in live. Currently, with the latest version, there are two ways of testing. One is the staging. In this case, it's kind of when you prepare to publish the module, you can really test against live module. But the problem is, if follow documentation, it's only load from the production workspace, and you cannot choose another workspaces. For me, it's a limitation because my team working on different workspaces. So I choose the local testing. For local testing, which is quite interesting, you need to have the locally run server, because you don't have Adobe services available, so you test in locally. By the way, for test locally, you don't need Adobe EMS. You can do it without it, because again, you locally, but you need to run the server. In my case, it's run locally, and if I just open it, it's look like following. That's what usually Adobe returns for registration. Now it's just basically just faked or mocked. And in this case, all these parameters are the same. And let me then show you how it works. So for that, you need to get the server JSON file, which you can find in one of the Adobe repositories. I have it for me prepared. And I will post it also on this GitHub, so you don't need to look a lot. You can just use it already. And what are you doing here? You have to create two certificates. By the way, there is documentation how to do it. So don't worry, Adobe prepared for that. Here is information about the testing. Because you see, the problem is here, you values you specify must match the content of your local server JS. Usually you don't have local server JS on Adobe Builder project. You need to find it on Adobe GitHub. By the way, you can find it, I guess, in samples repository. Yes, and it's telling what you need to do, because you need to prepare, you need to generate two certificates. That's one code, that's another one. You can do it, and then you copy. By the way, here is server.js, sorry. You can just copy it, and it works. For me, one problem was that to make it work, I need to address it. So I need to have here the correct URL, because by default, they have localhost 9080 index.html. And if you're not running your application locally, which you also can do, by the way, so if you run your builder locally, this URL can be local. In my case, I'm not running it locally. I'm testing against environment. And it's totally fine if I just define the environment. It's basically the base URL of all your actions, like this first part. And after you define in this one, all other you don't much care about. You don't need those values, honestly. The only you need is really just change this URL. After you prepared your file, you run it. You run it by node server.js, and it starts to listen. So if I will hit this URL again, just by refreshing it, you see, wait, you see it's hitting the server. So the call is executed successfully. And after you have the server running and you have configured here everything correctly, by the way, those two values does not matter. They're not used. You guys promise to remove them in next releases. I hope so. And don't forget to tell Adobe MS module mock to yes, because otherwise you need to install it and configure it. And that's it. After it's done, don't forget to refresh registrations. That's a very important point. I mean, in latest version, if you just save the config, it will do it automatically. If you change something within, let's say, this configuration file, you will redeploy application, refresh registration, because by refresh registration, it's loading the registration's information and loading your registration action, and then more or less caching it, so then it's know which columns where to display. And then if I go to the orders information, you see there's export status. That's basically my column which loaded information from this endpoint. And last, what I want to show you today is just to show you example. And if I will open the generated mesh URL, that's example of the query the Magento uses to get list of data. Which means, again, you technically don't need to build it against JSON schema. You can also build it against just some external API which deliver the same structure. You just change in the URL and then you can fetch information from third-party source, which is, I find, quite nice. And that's it. I hope it was helpful. I will post links into the GitHub. I hope it will be the first video when I don't need to blur anything, because I have nothing to hide this time. And that's so nice. And I wish you very nice and pleasant rest of your day. And yes, we'll see each other on the next videos. Bye bye.